So, Arabelle, you have done a lot of like advocacy work. You co-founded Boz in 2018. I know you're not working with them anymore, but you also helped organize the Oakland SESTA FOSTA protests back when that was outlawed. So tell me a little bit about the advocacy work and maybe explain to people who don't know what SESTA FOSTA is, because I think that there's still a lot of people who don't understand it. And I think that in light of the recent Supreme Court ruling upholding the Texas age verification laws, people should maybe be a little bit more educated on what the adult industry is facing in terms of like government suppression.
SESTA FOSTA was a bill that passed in 2018, where it basically made websites liable for specifically kind of anything that happened on them, specifically around sex trafficking. The problem is that so many different things can fall under that umbrella. And so when people were voting for it, they were like, of course, sex trafficking, bad.
Yeah. Sex trafficking is like such a like sexy thing to get behind because obviously nobody wants sex trafficking.
Yeah.
But like so many people lump any sex work under sex trafficking.
Yeah. And so like basically if there was anything to be found like as sex trafficking, you could hold like Facebook liable or YouTube or whatever site it was facilitated on. But what kind of happened is that it then made every website basically censor and wipe sex workers off of every platform because they didn't want them. Like, I mean, it didn't work for everything, but like, sure, they tried.
Yeah.
And like the people who took the biggest hit was, I'm going to use this as a good example, is Backpage, which was a website that was for mostly lower income in-person sex workers, escorts, prostitutes, whatever term you want to use, to be able to advertise on. And even like the police, when they like took it down, they were like, hey, this is actually how we find people who are trafficked. And there were lots of lawyers who were like, hey, this is how I can actually like stay in touch. So the people who are at the most risk and they were getting hurt were then like falling deeper underground.
Mm-hmm.
And like the only ways that people could find them or contact them was through that site.
So can you explain how Backpages worked and like how that was beneficial to the law in terms of like helping sex workers?
Yeah. I mean, it was helping trafficked people, not sex workers.
Yeah, sorry. But
it also helped sex workers also stay safe. So this was a website where you could, for very little money, put up an ad and get clients, right? So instead of like, say, having to work the streets or just like not being able or having to freestyle going into bars or whatever, it added a level of safety for a lot of sex workers. So when it disappeared, it forced a lot of people to do work that was more at risk of like, rape, death, theft, all those things, arrest. And like it helped if anybody was actually being like trafficked and being advertised, that's how police would use that site to find people who were being like forced. So basically, people who were being trafficked and consensual sex workers all paid for this. And it didn't help anybody. And it just hurt people. I got people into more dangerous situations. And period. And people were lost.
It also had like a community, like forums and stuff where sex workers could talk to each other and they could also flag problematic clients.
So that wasn't
right?
on Backpage, but this law then like sites like bad date lists and all those things also went down.
Okay.
So it's like Backpage, a lot of different sites went down.
Okay.
A lot of different advertisements and like a lot of sites where like people would report bad dates. If there's anybody that like experienced violence or anything like that with a client, they could report that number. And then like people who were engaging in that kind of work could like, screen people that way and see if there had been any reports. So it just did a lot more. I mean, it just only did harm. I don't think anything positive came out of it. What was interesting is like all the like more accessible, like all the websites that were made for like, it was a class thing. Like the fancy sites never went down. Like, the sites were with the more high-end workers, didn't go down. It was all like, to me, it was like war on like poor sex workers.
Why do you think that is the case?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, just poverty. Like we hate poor people. It's true. This country hates poor people.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting that like, and those are the people who, paid the price were those people. I think, a lot of people who had the means adapted and like went and like advertised elsewhere and were able to like keep working. And it's always like the poorest who take
I
the
guess
hit.
when you have money, you can pay for like good lawyers, right? To kind of argue.
Lawyers, there's like I said, the websites that people were advertising on that were like very expensive to advertise on are still there. You could make your own website. You could learn SEO. There's a million different ways if you have the money to do that. But, that's not everybody has that. So yes, that's the FOSTA, and then it created also just a huge amount of censorship too. So now sex educators, like people who were just like talked about sex, they would also like get censored on all platforms because everybody's afraid to get sued for trafficking.
Right.
So there's a large ramifications for a bill that didn't even help the people who they were claiming to help.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of, we see that so much with, organizations like Nicosi and Trafficking Hub. I mean, they dress up this, conservative religious right movement, and we want to protect women from sex trafficking. And they really use that as a Trojan horse to shut down porn.
Exactly. I mean, the woman from Exodus who literally posted
Layla Micklewhite.
Posted her video, like a part of her video. This was child pornography, on Twitter. Like it's just insane. And there was numerous people who had worked with them who then came out and said that they were completely shafted. Learning kind of the background of how anti-trafficking laws and organizations worked really made me question everything else. Because it sounds good, but it's not helping the people who are, and it's hurting a lot of people who are consensually doing the work.
Yeah.
So we put on that march into Oakland. It was me and Maxine Holloway, who still runs Boss. It's hard work. And I think it was activism and especially I think in identity-based activism gets very messy and tricky. And so I did not have the I didn't have it in me to keep going. And, but we started it, we put on, we set up a thing. We had emergency funds for people. I think they just shut that program down recently. But for years they were just if you didn't have a place to sleep, you didn't have you needed groceries, you need to feed your kid, whatever, you were sent a couple $100 to help in your time of need. So that was a thing. They help people get housing. There's a lot of different stuff, education, sharing resources. But yeah, so we put on the Oakland contingent because it was a national, I think actually it was a national thing. There were a couple people, marches internationally, but it was obviously it was a US law. So, but yeah, we did the Oakland march.